Well, hello everyone. Why don't you come on in? Let's get started. Take a seat and relax. Okay. Well, welcome to Get Walking with Pokémon Go. This is going to be just a brief introduction for older adults. I like to say to kind of activate your inner child because it turns out to be more fun than you might expect, and you'll get some exercise out of it as well. So first, let's talk why Pokemon. Well, it turns out that, in addition to being a fun game, a lot of older adults are actually finding it to have some real benefits. These are some quotes I got from the AARP bulletin just this last month. Exercise. So this one woman, she's 60 in New York, says, after years of inactivity, she marvels, quote, I found something that makes me want to exercise. Just exploration of your area. This guy in New York City said, I found new little parks and stores. And we'll show you today how Pokémon Go can get you into exploring your area. And lastly, connecting with friends and family, maybe younger family members. This one guy in Nebraska says, hey, the family goes on short local safaris looking for wild Pokemon. So those are all things you can do. 3 big benefits. Exercise, explore your world, and connect with the next generation. So at the end of this hour, you're going to know the basics of Pokemon Go. You're not going to be able to do everything in it. This is not a complete, this is just an overview. There's really Pokemon Go 101. So you'll be able to use Pokemon Go to get out walking every day, and hopefully you'll have enough to be able to talk with your children and grandchildren about Pokemon Go. We'll give you some of the common language you can use with them. So what is Pokemon Go? First, it's a completely free game for the iPhone and Android smartphones. I have been playing this for, a month and a half now. I haven't paid a dime, so you don't have to pay any money to play it. To play this game, you have to walk around your city. You can't just sit in your room or sit in front of a computer screen or look at your smartphone and stay in place. If you're going to just sit there, yeah, you can play the game a little bit, but you're really not going to play the game effectively. You're not going to have much fun if you're just sitting around. You'll be sitting around waiting for things to happen. Pokemon Go requires you to get out in your environment, walk around the streets. You can play it with someone else. It's kind of fun to walk with somebody. I go with my girlfriend all the time. She's a little more advanced than I am in Pokemon Go, and she says, hey, let's go for a walk around the block. So you can, but each of you is playing your own game. It's not like playing cribbage or playing duplicate solitaire or something. You're playing your own game, but you'll see later on there are some ways that you play together even though you're playing on your own. So I've already mentioned no need to spend any money. So what's the goal with Pokemon Go? And I think there are a couple of goals. And the more you get into the game, you'll find more things you can do. But there are 3 main things you do. One is you just pick up stuff. There's places you go, I'll show you, where you can pick up stuff, virtual items, and add them to your little virtual basket, and just have fun walking around and picking stuff up. You can also collect these cute little Pokemon creatures, these pocket monsters, they call them, that show up as you're walking around. You can also collect those creatures, and that's another objective in the game. And thirdly, every time you do stuff in the game like this, you gain experience points. And the more experience points you have, you can level up. Everybody starts at level 1, level 2, level 3. It gets harder as you go along. You have to collect more points. But that's another goal of the game. But I think the real goal here for us is have some fun, get outdoors, and keep walking. That's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about getting outside and breathing the fresh air and getting yourself walking. So I mentioned these 3 basic activities. You collect things stuff, and you collect that at something called a PokéStop. PokéStop, okay? You use the things you collect at these PokéStops. You get little balls and other little potions and things that go into your little basket in the game. But the things you collect, you can use to capture these little Pokemon creatures that you find around town. And lastly, the 3rd basic activity is you visit these, what they call a gym, where you can fight for your team. And we're not going to talk very much about that. That's kind of an advanced part of the game, but we'll at least say a little bit about it because if you're talking to your children or your grandchildren who are playing the game, they're probably doing that. And it'd be good to know a little bit about it. So along the way, you gain these experience points and you get to level up, but you've got to walk around town to do these activities. So here's what the main screen looks like. When you start Pokemon Go, it'll come up looking something like this. What's interesting about the game is these streets that you see are like Google Earth, or Google Maps. It shows you where you are right now. So this was taken at the corner of Elm and Cherry, straight ahead where my little guy is looking down Elm Street. That little U shape to the left is the library parking lot. So it's like you're really here. You're in your environment. So that's my guy. That's me standing there, my little avatar. In the lower left-hand corner, I could tap to get some info. I could even change my hair color. I could change the kind of the color of my jacket and my little avatar. Don't do that very often, but you could. And then there's this button for main menu we'll talk about later, that little round red and white thing at the bottom. But what you're really looking for are these PokéStops. And you can see I've got little arrows out there, these little floating squares. So let's talk a little bit more about these things. So you go to a PokéStop, which is this floating square that's somewhere in the environment, somewhere out there. It's stuck at a certain GPS location, usually at something interesting. They don't move around. These are specific places. You see them floating on the map as a blue cube. Looks just like this little picture. To collect things from this PokéStop, you have to walk within 50 feet of where that location is. So this is why you can't just sit at home and do this. You have to get out and go to where one of those things are. You collect a few things from it that go into your basket, and this thing turns pink or magenta. And at that point, it's kind of dead to you for another 15 minutes. So you can't just sit in front of one of these. I mean, you could if you were at a restaurant and there was one nearby. You could sit in a restaurant, have some meal. Every 15 minutes or so, you could collect more stuff. But if you really want to be in the game, this is where it forces you to walk around. You have to be walking around the town, visiting these places where there are PokéStops. PokéStops might be, this is what the Pokemon Go company says about it. They could be a location with an interesting story that's maybe got historical value. It could be a unique piece of architecture or art. In town here, there are a couple of PokéStops around paintings that are on the side of buildings. Could be a local spot where the popular spot where locals gather that isn't really well known. Could be a little coffee shop or a corner of a library. Might be a tourist spot. Could be an adventurous location, or it could be a location like a library or a place of worship. They're just around town, and you'll find each one that you go to is kind of interesting. The Oddfellows Hall here in town is one. The library is one. There's one at the Citrus. If you don't know, there's a painting of citrus fruits on the side of a building near downtown here. That's a PokéStop. So they're all over the place, and they're kind of interesting in themselves. My girlfriend and I traveled up to Grass Valley, and one of the PokéStops that we found walking around town was a sign that said the first temperance union in California was formed in Grass Valley, and there's a historic plaque describing it in a parking lot behind some stores. That was a PokéStop. And I told my friends about it who live in Grass Valley, and they said, geez, I've never seen that before. So, well, you need to play Pokemon Go. You'll see a lot of that stuff. So PokéStop is one of these floating balls, and with floating cubes, when you get close enough to it, like you see my avatar here, you'll notice that it's changed a little bit. And now it's this round circle. It becomes a floating disc. Well, that means you're now close enough to actually interact with it. If it's still a square, you're not close enough and you have to keep walking. In this case, you tap on it and it comes up like you'll see on the left here. In this case, it was the San Carlos post office. It has a little picture of the post office, which is kind of interesting. You swipe across that round circle and it starts spinning and this little stuff comes out. In this case, a couple of those red and white balls and another potion thing you can use but stuff comes out and you tap the little X at the bottom and you go back to the main screen, you're on the street again, and the stuff is now in your bag. So that's how you collect stuff in Pokemon Go. It's really not hard. You just Go around, walk by these places, tap on them, spin them, and collect some stuff. So what kind of stuff do you collect? Well, the big things that you're going to worry about as a new user is that you'll get red Pokeballs, these red and white round balls, and you use them to capture the creatures. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. You can also collect blue Pokeballs. You also use them to capture creatures. They're a little bit stronger. You don't get as many of the blue ones, but they're easier to capture creatures when you've got the blue ones. And then you get other stuff that you'll have to learn about as you go through the game. It's part of an exploration. Talk to your friends, talk to your kids. They'll tell you what some of the other stuff is about. I don't even know what all this stuff is for that you can collect. The big things are you get Pokeballs, blue and red ones. That's important. Second activity is collect Pokemons themselves. Now these are little creatures and they appear at random. It's hard to understand this at first, but the PokéStops are in fixed locations. But the Pokemon, they show up as you're walking around. It'll just buzz, and all of a sudden you look at your phone, and you'll say, oh, look at that. There's a little creature over to the left. And, at that point, you want to take your time to if you're crossing the street, don't look at your phone while you're crossing the street. Don't look at your phone while you're walking near a cliff. Don't look at your phone while you're walking on a diving board. Get to a safe location. Don't be that guy who falls off a cliff playing Pokemon or gets hit by a car crossing the street. So get to a safe location. You have about a minute, and then take a look at your phone. So you'll see on your phone, in this case, my phone buzzed, and there was a little creature. It's that little thing with the arrow pointing to it, and that's a Pokemon. There are a lot of different ones. There's a couple hundred right now, and as time goes on, the game says they're going to introduce new characters. But you tap on it, just like you would tap on those PokéStops. You tap on the creature, and it comes up what you'll see on the left. All of a sudden, there's the little creature shown with your phone. In this case, I'm across from the post office in San Carlos. You can see the post office in the background. There was a car there. But it uses my camera, and it superimposes that little creature on the camera. So it kind of looks, this is one of the kind of cute things about Pokemon Go, is it makes it look like you're actually working in the real world when you're not. And that's called augmented reality. It's putting an overlay on your view of reality to show you something. And in this case, they're showing you a Pokemon. Well, there's also a way to turn that off. I think this is a really clever use of technology. It makes the game very compelling to see a little creature sitting on the street. At the same time, that's all pretty distracting. There's a little up in the upper right-hand corner where that arrow is, there's a little switch, and if you tap it, then it looks like on the right, and you get rid of all that background, and you just see your little creature sitting in a green field. So this is what happens when you find a Pokemon, you tap on the creature. Then you want to catch them. So it's easy to do. You put your finger on the ball at the bottom, this little red and white ball. You swipe your finger straight up and let go. Take your finger off the screen. So you hold your phone in one hand, you put your index finger on it from the other hand, and you swipe up and let go. Kind of like you're flicking the ball forward. And you'll see the ball kind of goes up, and if you're accurate, it'll hit the little guy, and you'll capture him. It's not hard to do. It gets harder as you get to higher levels, but it's not hard to do. And with a little practice, you'll get it. It's pretty easy. Particularly when you're starting out, they make it easy. Once you catch little guy, little graphics are going to happen, and you come up with this whole screen that tells you all about the little Pokemon you've caught. Well, those things all mean something, but I don't think we're going to talk about it here. That's something you could go look into, and frankly, I play the game, and I rarely look at any of that until I had been playing the game for a couple of weeks. The big thing here is when you get to the end, there's that little check mark. When this screen comes up, tap that check mark, and you go back to the main screen. At that point, you've got it. So let me tell you that at this point, you have all the knowledge you need to play Pokemon Go. You can walk around town all day collecting stuff from PokéStops, and when little creatures appear, you can use those the little red balls to capture these creatures, and you're playing Pokemon Go. And you could tell as these little creatures get captured, you could tell your kids, hey, I got a Spearow, or what about that Pidgey, or have you seen that Machop that's around the corner? Because what's kind of interesting is if you do it with a friend, when one of those little creatures buzzes, both of you see it, and you both have a chance to capture it. You can each get your own. There's not one creature. You can both capture those creatures. So I'll be walking around with my girlfriend and our next door neighbor, and we're walking around town, and all of a sudden I get a buzz and she gets a buzz, and we all look at our phones and we say, "Oh, look at that! There's an XYZ here. Let's go get the Abrex." And we each do our own thing to try and capture the Abrex, and some of us capture it, some of us don't, but we kind of flick balls at it until we get it, and it does this little graphic thing, and we tap the check mark, and we're like, "Yay!" And then we move on our way. And there are a lot of different Pokemon to capture. They're all cute. They all make little movements. So I think at this point, you could just go do it. I'm going to talk about a few other things, but right now, you're ready to play Pokemon Go. So any questions we should talk about? Okay, so then let me talk about one other thing that you'll need to know about is the main menu. This is when you're looking at the main screen and you're on the street, you'll see that little red and white ball at the bottom. If you tap on that ball, you get this main menu that comes up on the right-hand side of the screen. And you'll notice at the bottom there's a little X. If you want to get out of this, you tap that little button at the X. So one of the things to remember in Pokemon Go, always tap the X or the check mark at the bottom of the screen to get out of whatever you're looking at. That's your kind of escape valve. But you have a couple of things you can click here. Let's take a look. If you click on the left, this little bottom left, there's a thing that says Pokemon, and it gives you a list of all the Pokemon creatures that you've captured in your walking around town. So as you capture more, they'll show up here, and you can tap on one, and it comes up in a little bit bigger picture, and you can show it to a friend or your kids and say, "Check out this weird thing I got. It's a Hakuna. What is that?" So that's one thing you can do. And again, there's that X on the bottom of the screen to bring you back to the main menu. And then from the main menu, you could also click this thing on the right, which brings up a list of all the stuff you've collected at PokéStops. That's your bag. I think I've called it a basket before, but they call it your bag. And it's got all the stuff that you've collected. You can see here that I've collected a number of those red balls. I've collected some blue balls. I've got some lucky eggs. I've got some incense. Those are all things that you could try and see what happens when you tap on one of them. But this is just to show you what you've collected. So if you're wondering, God, have I collected anything? You could look right here. And of course, every time you capture creatures or try to capture creatures, you start using up these Pokeballs. And if you use up all your balls, you can't capture more creatures. So if you are capturing creatures, then you need to walk around to more PokéStops and collect more stuff. And then if you collect more stuff, you can go collect more creatures, capture more creatures. That's the whole game in a nutshell. So the last thing I want to touch on here is something else you'll hear. It's called a Pokémon Gym. And these, you'll see on your screen, they're these very tall towers. There aren't very many of them. They're far fewer than PokéStops, but there are a few of them. And that's a place where you can go to fight your Pokemon against other players' Pokemons. It's not so much a fight. It's really just that you tap on the screen as fast as you can. Tap, 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 tap. Somebody wins, somebody loses. It's almost like rolling the dice. But you have to keep tapping your finger to roll the dice. And the gym, if you look, like this one is red. It shows the color of the winning team. So there are 3 teams. There's red, there's yellow, there's blue. So there's 15 million Pokemon Go players right now. There's only 3 teams. So it's not like there's a captain. It's not like there's a hierarchy. But you could ask somebody, "Oh, are you on Team Blue?" And they'll say, "Yeah, I'm Team Blue, and you're Team Yellow." So we're not going to talk any more about gyms. I wanted you to know that they were there because your kids, your grandkids, your friends who play Pokemon Go will be telling you about them. But as a beginner, you don't want to worry about that. You just want to know that they're there, and it'll come to you once you're more familiar with the rest of the game. So a couple more notes. When you first start the game, it's going to ask you to create an account. You have to do it. If you don't want to do it, don't play the game, but it's free. When you reach level 5, you're going to be asked to join one of those teams I just mentioned, red, blue, or yellow. You can join the same team as your friends if you want to be on the same team as your friends. You could join a different one if you like to play a little bit against your friends. But I got to say, in the end, it doesn't really matter. it's kind of fun to be on the same team. I'm glad my girlfriend and I are on the same team because we can there are a few things in the advanced game that we can do together, that we can kind of team up to do something. So it's kind of nice to be on the same team, but if we were on different teams, it wouldn't. I mean, there's some advantages to that too, actually. I don't think it matters that much. You can just pick a team. It probably matters a lot to your 12-year-old son, grandson, or granddaughter, but that's a different. That's a whole different. That's a whole different mindset. We're talking about what matters to us, and I don't think it really matters at all. There's also a point in the main menu where you can pay real money to buy some of the things that you get at PokéStops, like those little balls. You walk around, you collect the balls, and you use the balls to capture creatures. Well, you may get frustrated and say, I don't want to walk around and collect all those darn balls. It's just taking too long. Okay, well, you could go pay $5 and get 200 of them or 400 of them. So there are ways. I'll just tell you again, I haven't spent any money on this game. Where I might be tempted to spend money is if my grandkids wanted to play this with me, there is something I could buy. You could buy, I think you get a dozen of them for $2 or something. It's not very much money. Something called a lure, which helps bring in more of these creatures so that you can capture more of them. Makes it more fun. If I was playing this with my grandkids, I might think about being a lure, because then I could be the cool guy who has the lures that we put out, and then we sit around and collect more Pokemon because we're doing it. So now what? What do you do? Well, download the application. It's free. I'll say that again, completely free. Go walk around, start collecting some stuff. Keep walking, keep walking, keep walking. This is a reason. Get out and say, I got nothing to do. What am I going to do? Let me walk around the block and collect some Pokemon. I'll relate a story. My girlfriend the other day said, it was early in the morning. She said, I need another hour in bed. I'm just tired. I can't get up. I'm like, okay. So I went down. I was working on the computer. 5 minutes later, I hear her traipsing down the stairs, fully dressed, saying, come on, I saw a Pokemon outside that we need to get. Let's go get it. So it got her out of bed. It got her walking around. That was kind of fun. I know Anna here has said her son, who's 19, how often do you do stuff with your 19-year-old son? They're out doing stuff with their friends. But she said her son will come in and say, hey, Mom, do you want to go walk around and catch some Pokemon? Let's go. So there's a connection there to be made, which is kind of fun. So go out on Pokemon, collect them all. That's what they always say. Pokemon, collect them all. I'll just tell you a little bit about me. My name's Jim Shrimp. You could contact me, info@shrimpware.com if you want. I retired this year after spending 20 years at Hewlett-Packard, and then 15 years at a software startup that I created. It's still going strong. And now, being retired, I make things at Tech Shop. I cook, I read, I generally just enjoy life. I'm also here at the Adult Community Center twice a month. Stop in with your questions. I'm all about helping people. And I'm currently Pokemon level 24, and I am trying to catch them all. So, thank you.